Onion, a Warrior podcast. We're your hosts, Angelo Fioris. That's Mike Haggerty. And this is our weekly, monthly, quarterly look at the great show Warrior. Mike, it's been a while, unfortunately.
It has been a while. It has been a while, but the show is still good, so that hasn't changed.
Yeah.
And
Too bad
but
life and
we
times get in the way of doing a podcast.
right, and I was actually just thinking the other day too, searching for any info if there's any updates on a possible season 4. Has there been any new info on that?
I have not seen anything, but I'll also be honest with you that I did not do much in the way of looking around for possible updates of a season 4. I did hear that a Ted Lasso season 4 is coming, so
Hmm.
that's good news. But that's a different podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a good show too, though.
It is. It's one that I certainly enjoyed. I think I enjoyed this one a little bit better, though.
Hmm. Yeah, same here. I
I mean,
mean,
different kind of shows, of course, but just from a if you say gun to your head, which one you like better? I like Warrior better.
all right, let me get my gun. We'll sort this out.
There you go. All right, season 3, episode 3. Let's get into it. Enough delay. No Time for Fucking Chemistry. Original air date June 29th, 2023. And the episode opens with Hong, Young Jun, Assam outside of Happy Jacks, and they've got one thing in mind. What is that?
They want to persuade Happy Jack to continue to do business with them, to hold on to their materials, and they're going to use some of their newfound fake money to do so. But it's a chance. It's risky because, well, we know Happy Jack he's no one's fool, right?
Yep.
And they're taking a big risk here, and
I
they know it.
agree.
Especially Young Jun knows it.
Yeah, Young Jun's very nervous at this point. He's not entirely confident, right? One of the things he says to Assam is, yeah, those bills looked good in our basement. But now, this is the litmus test. And I'm crapping my pants a little is sort of what's coming out of this right here.
Right. And what I noticed about this is that, for me anyway, it seemed like this is the first time we've sort of seen them act a little differently. Like Young Jun is usually the one like devil may care attitude, but in this occasion he was feeling it. So I guess he's a little scared of Happy Jack.
And again, heavy is the head that wears the crown. He is in charge now, Mike, and um, it's all on his shoulders. The buck stops with him. There's not a Father June to act as a safety net.
But too, what I was thinking is that why didn't they just come one option? They could have come clean to him and said, "Hey, we're now in the counterfeit business. Here's some fake money. Use it as you will." Of course, that could have blown up in their faces, but it might have worked too. I mean, I don't know.
I think a guy like Jack would not be interested in allowing a possible extra spotlight to be shown on his activities. He's got enough going on without needing to get into the counterfeiting business. And so now they're at the table, the bargaining table with Jack, and their position is, here's our money for the last load, here's our money for our next order, and here's a little extra for your troubles. So they're being very generous with this fake cash that they're looking to pawn off. And Jack takes the cash and hands it to like his boy behind him, who starts doing the counting while the verbal exchange between the parties continues. And Jack just doesn't like these guys, does he? He doesn't want to, he don't trust them fully.
No, their relationship is purely transactional. It is based on what you can do for me, so to speak. And Happy Jack, obviously, no one here's a fool. Everyone's savvy, even though they did kind of try to trick him with the bills. But Happy Jack, otherwise, is no fool, right? He's a
Yeah.
savvy businessman. He's a savvy gangster, and he's also a very dangerous person. And Young Jun is well aware of this.
And let's not forget Chow is in on this meeting because he's part of the
Yes.
plan, right? He's the one that steered everybody towards the whole idea of all that chop. And Jack teases and questions Chow, what do you with the hop way now?
Hmm.
And but regardless, uh, the money gets validated as good, right? Hey, it's the right count, and let's roll. And Jack says, "Get these men their product."
Yeah,
It's a done
and
deal. So it
and it
worked.
worked.
It worked. Holy crap, it worked. I mean, you had a feeling that it would, right? But anyway, that's where the scene ends, and we go to credits coming out of credits, we are in Nellie's wine cellar, Mike, and she gets an unexpected visitor.
Yep, she's talking to is Strickland, Douglas
Douglas
Strickland.
Strickland, correct.
Right.
The industrialist.
Yes, and we also find out there's a little bit of history between them. But this is just something we see today when we're probably going for time in memorial and forever that he wants her land. And
Yeah.
he's also we saw from the previous episode, he's also aware of her personal life now too, which he's going to use as a bargaining chip.
Yeah, he spied her with a toy at the end of the last overture that he made to want to buy her land, and now he's back again, trying to push for a deal, right? And he makes some insinuations here about the abundance of Chinese girls working the land, and he says some might consider it could be a brothel, right? And he tries to play off like, but not me, not me, of course, you know.
Yeah,
But it's clearly a veiled threat, and it's a very tense conversation.
Right. And yeah, here we see a different type of manipulation, right? And again, this is not too different than the previous scene in that one party wants something and they have he thinks he has some leverage, and probably
Right.
young June and in the Hop Way, they believe, they perceive they had some leverage and that they had this fake cash that they could fool them with, right? Because if you have counterfeit money, well, I mean, why not spend it like a drunken sailor? Who cares, right?
Sure.
if you can always make more chop. So I saw a little bit of a parallel here, but yeah, he's leaning on her and he's being a little coy about it. And he's saying wouldn't want the polite larger society to know about your predilections. Or I'm paraphrasing here, obviously.
Yeah, but he lets on obviously that he knows about sharing your bed with one, meaning the Chinese, and that's when she's
right.
like, all right, get the hell off of my land.
Right. And she's not going to be intimidated by him.
She's not going to be intimidated.
She's tough in her own way.
Yeah. And getting back to we get the sense that there's history between them. We kind of knew that already from the last episode. She had mentioned that he was an associate of her husband's previously. So they know each other. He said it when he was talking about her husband, when he was saying, what would he think now of you or whatever. So yeah, Strickland clearly is not a man that will be rebuffed, and he'll be back, won't he?
Yeah, we'll be back.
So we leave that part of the story, and now we see Abigail and Lee in Abigail's bar, and they're now discussing the offer that Special Agent Mosley made in regards to deputizing Lee and having him join him in locating the counterfeiters that they're pretty sure are located in Chinatown, Mike. She doesn't like it, though.
No, and I really appreciated the arc of Lee because, as I've said all along, as we've said, that he has always been kind of the moral center of the show. And now here we see him, I won't say he's down on his luck, but his fortunes have changed, right? He's off the police force. He's running a bar. He's in a relationship, which is good. So he's happy about that. But we know he's a man on the run because of his past, because of what he did in Georgia. And he's involved with a black woman in the 19th century.
Right.
So he's got a couple of issues going on here. And he's talking about trying to build a better life. She's not comfortable with it. And they go back and forth. They've debated going on the run.
Right.
So he's kind of a man cornered, and he sees this as a way out, or he sees this as his best option.
And he has to try, and that's where it is. And Lee, he's a resolute guy as well. And when he sets his mind to achieving something or reaching a goal, we know that he does it. And he's going to take Mosley up on his offer.
Yeah, and I think Lee too is also he's one of the most sensible characters in the show. He's not. I think he's level-headed. Maybe that speaks to him being an investigative cop, because I almost feel like, let's say, like some Georgia lawman or whatever were to find him and to tie a rope around his neck, I think he'd be like, all right, well, I've earned this, whether I was justified or not. And I think he would accept his fate. I think at the end of the day, he's kind of he's a straight arrow no matter what he is. Like, the rules are the rules, and if I break the rules, I gotta play by that. That's just my feeling about him.
Yeah, interesting. I don't know. I think he would go down fighting rather than, all right, you got me, Sheriff. I don't think that's what's going to happen with Lee is facing his life.
Yeah, he would fight, but I'm saying if it was a case where it was just he knew it was over, I think he would be very stoic. I believe in you, Lee. You'd be stoic.
We leave Officer Lee and Abigail to debate. Meanwhile, we catch up with Mai Ling now. We're at Longzhi headquarters, and she has absorbed the three brothers' Tong, which, if you recall, that happened in the last episode when Khan Pak and Li Yang went over there to have a conversation with them, and it turned into a similar scene as when Xing and Li Yang went to the other Tong a season ago.
Yeah, yeah, and she's absorbing. She's making some power moves. She's trying to build her base. It's right now she has the upper hand with the Hopway, right? You know, we remember from the end of season one with Li Young and Assam, and he won the fight and he won the contest, and they had a truce, right?
Yep.
So she's sort of maintained the upper hand, and she's arguably the sharpest person on the show. So she's going to continue to expand, but there's a little bit of an issue here. It's not all cut and dry, black and white.
Yeah. As they discuss the absorption of the three brothers Tong, she actually asks Khan Pak for his advice in regards to whether they will, acquiesce and allow themselves to kind of be absorbed. And Khan Pak says they will, or they will be made to. So
he said they were operating out of fear.
Right.
So Kong Pak is kind of vouching for them but the interesting thing about Kong Pak is that we don't really, at least I've had the sense, or we've seen actually, that he's not 100% on board with Mai Ling, right? I mean, he and Li Young are good friends, and he's tried to talk Li Young into being the leader of the Tong, just as we've seen with Assam, with the Hopway, a similar situation. People try to get Assam to be like the leader, right? And we've seen it here too.
Khan Pak is being dutiful, but he is not necessarily fully compliant from a philosophical standpoint.
He's being a little dubious.
Yeah, he doesn't want, but listen, his Tong got absorbed by Mai Ling. He's resentful, and I don't blame him, but she asked him to be on his council, so he must act accordingly if he wants to keep his head. How about that?
Literally keep his head.
Yeah. So now the scene shifts a little bit, and we see Mai Ling in a mirror holding a dress, the one that was given to her by Eliza in the last episode, and Li Yang sees her, and he's not so keen on her forays into the pond, and he wants to try to protect her.
Yeah, right. And Li Young has been the voice of reason throughout this whole thing, and he's always been the one he's been the cautious one. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of a flip if you think about it, because in the dynamic with Li Young and Mai Ling, he's kind of the voice of reason, but in the Hopway, it's her brother who's the voice of reason to Young June usually. So it's kind of, even though they're both the number two, right? But the siblings are on different ends of the spectrum.
Right. One's a consigliere and the other one is the Godfather.
Right. And the Godfather wants to keep pushing, even though in that case, the consigliere maybe not necessarily go along with the program, which I think that's kind of interesting. I don't know if that was intentional.
So Mai Ling does not want protection from Li Yang when she goes into the pond, and that's where the scene ends. We're now in the police department, and Agent Mosley brings now Deputy Lee, Federal Deputy Lee, to Chief Atwood's office. And it's a completely different attitude from Chief Atwood now compared to the last time these two met, isn't it?
Yeah. And I really appreciate these scenes, because this is where a lot of the humor from these particular episodes come from, because Mosley is kind of a smart ass. He flips on a dime. When he first met with Atwood, and he was like, I'd like this and this. He goes, oh, well, let me tell you how it's going to be. He just he laid into him, and Mosley still has that sort of twinkle in his eye in this one, and he's throwing out some good lines.
And Atwood is just playing the grinning and bearing it character, and sure, whatever you need. So now we've got his request to Chief Atwood rather is to round up the Chinatown squad, and so he goes to do so. And this is where Lee and Mosley are actually briefing the Chinatown squad about how to test for counterfeit money and kind of what they're onto. So it's a nice turn of events for Lee in a sense, and he does take his newfound position from a federal standpoint and allows himself to be a little loose with his tongue when talking to some of the Chinatown squad guys who object to these methods they're asking.
Right. Well, this is where we get the title of the episode.
Right, right,
So
right. So one of the Chinatown Squad guys, I forget what his name is, the bald guy with the beard and that's when they're describing, hey, a couple drops of this on the bills will determine whether you got yourself a counterfeit one. And he says this is no time for fucking chemistry.
right, and that's where Lee comes back and goes, "Well, this does concern you," and I'm paraphrasing here. He goes, "Some of the bribes that you take might not be real money."
Right. And he doesn't
then,
like
then
that. He gets up right away and gets in Lee's face, and it looks like stuff's about to go down, but it does not. Cooler heads prevail, and they step
yeah,
in, and blows are not exchanged. But boy, it looked like it was going to get close. Atwood stops the fracas from breaking out. This is when Bill and Lee talk first time in a while. Bill's a little annoyed. You told me you didn't want to be a cop anymore, and Lee's got his own reasons at this point, things that assurances that Bill could never offer him had he returned to the SFPD. And
right. And
Lee
Bill's
kind of
yeah,
makes that clear.
and Bill's almost kind of like a spurned boyfriend in
Yeah,
this
he's like a
sense. Like,
sour woman right here.
yeah, he's
Yeah.
because Lee is clearly. Well, I don't know if Lee's necessarily moved on from him, but at least at this juncture, Lee doesn't really have any use for him, and you can't blame Lee because O'Hara's kind of done him wrong quite a bit.
Enough
So,
times.
right, because O'Hara seems hurt because he's like, he offers his help and Lee rejects his help, and actually, I thought there was a part here too that I thought this could have been the title of the episode. There was a line here where he's talking to O'Hara, and O'Hara says, "Well, just for fuck's sake, stay alive." I thought that actually could have been a good title of the
Yeah,
episode.
he says, "Stay safe, Agent Lee." And he goes, "I can't guarantee that." He goes, "Well, then for fuck's sake, stay alive then."
Yeah,
But
that'd be
yeah,
my
Lee does share with Bill before he leaves. Lee shares with Bill that he wants to visit Chow, and that's when Bill says, "Well, all right, well, let's get going." And Lee's like, "I'm gonna go solo on this one," and you saw Bill's feelings right there in his
yeah.
face for
Yeah,
sure.
he says he's no fan of yours. He tells him bluntly.
Yeah, yeah. We now shift to Hopway headquarters. It's the cellar, and printing is going on. It's Assam and Yan Mi, and she's essentially cleaning up. I guess the shift is over, and they're talking, and she's obviously quite resentful about the
Right.
position that she's finding herself in, and she's not shy about vocalizing that.
No, she's not scared of him. She's not scared of the tongue at all.
Right.
She's there for her own reason. She's there to help her family, to get her father out of debt and keep him from getting beaten up, which obviously is important to her.
And she
And
mentions
she
that.
yeah, and she makes no bones about it. And then because Assam is trying to play the good guy, but she's kind of calling him out in his nonsense, right? She's like, he says, we can protect you, and she goes, it's funny. They said the exact same thing to my father before they beat him.
Yeah, we missed one payment, and
Yeah,
then we beat him, right?
they missed one payment, and then they beat
So
him. Yeah,
some protection. It was clearly uh, she she had to remind him as well that you know I didn't come to you, you guys came to us. So she wasn't seeking out uh,
right,
you know she wasn't necessarily seeking out to partner with them, but she really didn't have a choice, right?
right,
And
right.
Assam tried to make it as if she like wanted in on the action almost, which is weird.
Mm.
Uh, but that's where the scene ends. It's a relatively quick one, and now we see Mai Ling. She's dressed up in that outfit. She's in the pond, and she and Eliza are admiring the artwork at this very fancy gathering.
Right, and then we see that fairly quickly her husband shows up,
Eliza's
and
husband, right, right.
Eliza's husband shows up, and this is kind of a quick scene. This one kind of felt like a setup to me, like this is setting up a plot point for a later time, because it was one of those, a lot of times with this show and with other things you'd be watching, and you'll see a scene, you don't know why it's going on, but then later on you realize. So I'm expecting that this is building towards something.
Everything happens for a reason in this show, and there's no throwaways in terms of character interactions when it comes to the writing here. And
Mm.
her husband comes over, and he's immediately like taken by Mai Ling. He really, the small talk is flowing freely. The banter is friendly, and it's an interesting scene because her husband Bernard, he says something like, "Oh, you didn't tell me she was funny too,"
Mm.
something like that. So it really was like you said, it feels like something else is coming from this. I'm not sure what. But while she's making that good impression, you look behind and she's getting stared down by
Mr. Buckley,
Mr.
Mayor
Buckley,
Buckley.
who's at the
Sorry.
same gathering, and he sees Mai Ling, and he's got to be like, "What the f is she doing here?" And he's accompanied by his new friend, Miss Archer.
Yes.
Who else is at this
Yeah.
party? His opponent,
Yes.
Thayer.
Yes, there. And she noted, and Archer notices him too. We kind of, the scene kind of drifts from the Mai Ling storyline to a little bit into the Buckley storyline. And
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. And it was seamless. And we see that Miss Archer is no fan of Thayer, and she just wants to crush him, and she wants to help Buckley.
Yeah,
But there's also
like, if you don't call me, I'm going to start to think you don't like
right,
me.
right.
What's her game? That's my question. Because it's like, all right, it's political, but like, she into Buckley, like romantically interested?
Or is she attracted to his power?
Something's up here, Mike. It doesn't feel like you said, there's no throwaway interactions. I don't feel like she's on the up and up. We'll see. Hopefully soon enough. Meanwhile, we see Buckley's assistant, I don't even know the guy's name. He's the one that looks like Andrew Dice Clay. And he's sitting there with a newspaper reporter, essentially giving him the scoop on Thayer, the mayoral opponent, Thayer's brother-in-law, who was found in an opium den. It's an anonymous tip. All the info needed to plant the story, plus some cash to make this all happen, is included there. So a little espionage now by the Buckley camp to damage the reputation of Thayer, who's clearly winning the hearts of the voters.
Yeah. Buckley is not playing by the rules, but then again, I mean,
When
this is
did
politics, right? And politics is a dirty business, and it was arguably even dirtier then, arguably. But yeah, this is just yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, this is just a quick little scene showing manipulation, media manipulation, political manipulations, and machinations, and I've noticed the scenes in this particular episode have been fairly quick. I didn't officially time them out, but the pacing of this episode has been pretty tight. It's been like boom, 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 and I appreciate that. I mean, I appreciate the long scenes too, but I appreciate the sort of quick edits, and it's kind of moving things along at a quicker pace. And this scene too is relatively quick.
Yeah, I enjoy the rapid fire scenes as well, because it helps you fill in a lot of blanks. Sometimes the stories linger with longer scenes, and then characters get left out of episodes, or their impact on them is minimal at any given time. But we do move on now from the chicanery of Buckley and his assistant into Mr. Leary, who finds Strickland. And this is, if you recall, upon the orders of Mr. Pierce, right? They cut a deal in the last episode. I want you to pay Strickland a visit. And so he, Leary, in his threatening way, moves forward towards Strickland, and Strickland doesn't seem to be too concerned.
No. Yeah, he has security. And what was interesting in this is that he said to Leary something to the effect, he goes, "You should know that I'm not a man who can be intimidated." And I almost thought that Leary did look a little apprehensive. I don't want to say scared, but a little apprehensive, because I've never seen Leary scared before. I thought he was basically fearless, but he if not scared, maybe put off. I don't know. What did you think?
Here's what I pulled from that. Okay. He says, "I'm here to pay a visit from Mr. Pierce," if you recall. And he says, Strickland does, back to Leary, "Well, if Pierce sent you, then he should have informed you that I never travel alone." And you see the two bodyguards who are probably indefinitely well armed, right? So to me, that insinuated almost that Pierce was sending Leary off to get ambushed.
Interesting.
And that's why that's what you saw on Leary's face. A little bit of fear, because he's like, holy shit, I'm about to walk into it here. But also the calculation that Pierce may have also been trying to set him up in a way to do him harm by proxy through Strickland's bodyguards.
Interesting. I didn't even think of that, but that's a very interesting point.
And I think that Strickland obviously realizes it, because he says, "I'm not the man you threaten. I'm a man you make a deal with." And then he actually invites Leary to join him in his carriage. And that's where the scene ends. So Strickland has got something in mind.
That's a really interesting take. That didn't even occur to me. So good for you.
Yeah, I did not pick that up the last couple times. I saw the episode, Mike, but it dawned on me on the last time around here when I watched it to prep for this. So, because obviously he came threateningly. Why wouldn't they? Why wouldn't Strickland have just said, "Go ahead and kill them"? Instead, he gave Leary a clue. Said, "You should
Yeah.
be getting killed right now."
That is really interesting. Hmm.
Let's move on. Where we see Assam, he's working out. His shirt is off. He's a little sweaty. He's got his nunchucks out and he's doing his thing. And Yan Mi is she's watching him.
Yeah, and she's getting ready to leave, and he offers to walk her home. Was that this scene, or am I getting that mixed up?
Yeah. This is where she says to him, "Oh, is that how gangsters train to beat up old men or something
Oh,
like
right,
that?"
right. You know, a little dig, and then she had a really good line in this scene too.
And
That
he
that
says,
was
"I also beat up young men."
yes. He goes, "I like to mix it up. I like to beat up young men too." And
And he's shirtless, and you're starting to feel like there's some vibing in the air here now.
yeah, a little tension. But then she says to him, "Have fun playing with your wood."
Yeah, that's her closing line. But she says that after he pats her down, he has to pat her down. Boss's
Yeah.
orders, right?
Yep.
So they want to make sure she's not walking with any of the fake chop that she's been making, right? So that's how much they really trust her. Back to Strickland and Leary. They're now together in, I don't know, Strickland's study. They're kind of sharing a drink, and they're talking about their Civil War experiences and how
Yeah.
that kind of shaped them.
Yeah, and this scene was sad. They're both talking about what they lost. Strickland lost a wife. He lost a son. Leary tells a little bit about his story. He says that he was there. He was fighting in the Irish Brigade, and he said he prayed to get home to his sons, and he did, but only to lose them to the pox, as he said it. And we knew that already anyway. We knew that from the previous season, but this scene kind of at least a little bit humanized both. We've already had Leary somewhat humanized.
Yeah,
But
and Strickland says something like, God can be cruel. He's a fucking prick, is what he is."
yeah, Leary.
So Leary's not over it. He harbors it. It hurts, and that hurt is part of who he is. But they bond, right? And Strickland tries to set himself apart from some of the other greedy owners and industrialists that Leary has been used to speaking to and dealing
Right.
with, right?
Right.
And so now Leary is paying attention as Strickland speaks.
Yeah, and you see that for the first time in Leary's political career, he's almost kind of. I think it's starting to make sense to him. Right, that's my sense. That
Yeah,
dealing with all
because
these.
Strickland says to him, "Start thinking big, Leary. You're getting 5 Irishmen a job here, 10 Irishmen a job there. That's all well and good, but then at the end of the day, you're just a tired old hoodlum who doesn't have the strength to be the muscle anymore. And then what happens to you? So you got to think bigger." And that's where Leary's like,
Right, and I think this is the first time that Leary's really understanding his new role. Right, because he was good at just being a thug, and then he got into politics, and all the season we've seen so far, he's been a little bit out of his element. Right, he hasn't felt entirely comfortable with the situation, but Strickland kind of lays it out in a way that makes sense to him
and sees him as positions him as a political power, not as some thug to be used by the industrialists who are blowing smoke up his ass.
Right.
It's a great scene. And the scene closes with the camera trained solely on Leary. And before the scene cuts away, you hear, "These are fucked up times." Then the camera cuts to Young June talking about their problems with the long Z. And for a minute there, I thought it was Strickland saying, "These are fucked up times," because of the edit. But then you realize, oh, it was Young June saying that. But I rewound it, and you could have said Strickland, if you thought Strickland was saying it, it still would have been in context.
Right.
It was great editing right there. But Young June is now talking about their problems with the long Z, right? And but we are the fucking Hop Way, and we are the badasses, and we are going to party because we have the chop. I mean, it's this money now that is really making him ballsy and brazen, isn't it, Mike?
Yeah, he's got
Big money.
confidence. He's definitely got confidence in this scene. He tells him to get drunk and get sticky.
Right, right. Because we're gonna party because we're taking it back.
Right.
And
And
then Young
he's
June, he does something that probably was never
yeah,
done in the 1800s. He makes it
yeah,
rain.
I thought that too. I was like, yeah, they probably were borrowing a little bit from the present, but that's all right. I'll give you
Yeah,
that.
yeah. I'll let it go because we know.
Mm.
Um, but Assam though during all this appears disconnected from the revelry, Mike, and he sits down with Chow, and they start talking about Mai Ling and how she's making moves.
Yeah, yeah, and he's warning him, and what I was thinking in this scene was that Assam at the beginning of the season there was so much promise that he was going to turn over a new leaf and become the hero that they wanted him to be, but we're seeing he's slowly getting sucked back into the gangster world. He's not quite fulfilling what the end of season two kind of almost promised.
He's not the man on the wall anymore, that's for sure, Mike.
No, no, exactly. He's not the man on the wall,
There's been
and
several times now he's been referred to and seen as just a hatchet man. He's been mentioned to him on more than a few occasions now, and a couple in this episode.
By the way, speaking, something else occurred to me watching this. I wonder if this is where the term hatchet man came from, because that term is used today, and they're using it in the show. But I wonder if it harkens back. I guess I'm assuming because Chinese gangsters use hatchets.
I'm gonna have to look that one up. We probably should have done it before the show.
To the Google machine we go after the
That's what
show.
happens when you do one of these every 3 months now. You lose your flow. We cut away now. It's Assam again, and he's at the print shop, their print shop. And Yanmi is working. He comes in and he brings her food, brings her some dumplings, and she's starving. She sits down to eat.
Yeah, but she doesn't like them.
She says they suck. They're the worst. They taste crappy. And he thinks they're the best in Chinatown.
Can I tell you just as a brief aside that the last place that I used to work, there was a dumpling place down the street from it. And when I tell you that these were actually the best dumplings I've ever had,
Nice.
I mean, I miss them like I miss an old friend. I mean, like these were chef's kiss to these dumplings.
Nice.
Anyway, I digress. I just want to tell you that I appreciated this scene on a different level because I'm like, I used to have some really good dumplings. So I'm
Nice.
sorry. I'm just getting a little off topic here for a minute.
When he says these are the best dumplings in Chinatown, she says, sure, maybe if you grew up on a farm. And he says, I did grow up on a farm. That explains a lot.
Yeah, I'm enjoying the dialogue between them. It's
Yeah.
pretty funny.
But she also says, I know way better places than this. And so they're off to go find that way better place. And the scene cuts to a kid's puppet show. And they're there eating dumplings, apparently good dumplings, while they're watching this show. And she explains kind of the plot because he's not familiar with it.
Yeah, they're going into Chinese mythology, which I'm assuming is real. It's something about a thunder god that accidentally killed a woman, and it explains why thunder always precedes lightning, from what I recall.
Right. This is why we have lightning before thunder. That was sort of the moral
Lightning
of that whole tale.
Right.
But really, the important takeaway from this scene is where she says to him, I saw you at the riot like an angel from the sky coming down to save us. And I thought you were the one to save us. This harkens back to what you just said, Mike. But then I see you beating my old man, and you're nothing but a hatchet man.
Yeah.
Have it there.
Yeah. And it's kind of fun to see that he's probably arguably taken more abuse from the women in his life than he has in any physical confrontation with a man. Penny, I don't think anyone to the degree of Yan-Mi. I was going to say Penny. She called him on the carpet a few times, but I think Yan-Mi
and Atoy as well,
and Atoy and his sister. Obviously, I think the women on this show have been rougher on our boy Assam more than anyone else.
He tries to apologize. He says, "I'm sorry," and she doesn't accept the apology. She just says to him, "It's not too late for you to choose differently." And the scene ends there. Really powerful words. But we also know that Assam has a history of not listening to people who are a little bit smarter than him. I think we're all a little bit guilty of that in life. All right. Hong now. The scene cuts to Hong. He's back at his boyfriend's burlesque show. That really odd looking dude is singing up on the stage, whatever the song and the tune is. He's just a weird looking guy, ain't he? And I don't mean that in any disrespectful way, but the character is really made up in To me, a flamboyant fashion which appears out of place in 1870s.
Yeah, and I think I know what you're saying, because I was wondering how did, if this is true, if this actually occurred, how did this play in the 19th century, right? Because we know that the 19th century wasn't exactly a time of open-mindedness, right? There
Right.
was no let's just say that it might have been a little bit more difficult for people like Hong and his boyfriend there. So that's what I was wondering too. I was like, how accurate would this be? But I, maybe someone knows. Again, I don't know how that would have played.
He does let in a little bit on that, Mike, when he says, when he and Hong are, well, first of all, they have their whole gay kissing scene, right? And they really go at it, just to establish context that they're definitely doing something. And then it quickly cuts to them having using Hong's pipe, the pipe that he got in an earlier scene. And they're
Yeah,
having a post coital smoke, I guess. And they're small talking, and Hong shares a little bit of his backstory, right? And his boyfriend shares a bit of his backstory. But one of the things his boyfriend says is, uh, artists are more accepting.
hmm.
So that's where, like in the 18 in that time frame in the 1870s, how would that have flown outside of those four walls? Probably not very well, but within the artistic confines, let's say, very accepted, and that's what I took from that. Hong's backstory is an interesting one, though, isn't it?
Yeah. He's been in the tongue since he was a boy, right? And, he had a cruel father. His father was a prick.
Yep.
Which, I mean, how many times have we heard that? How many bad men in history had a real prick for a father? I mean, really, if you look at probably every historical monster, right,
Yep.
really had a prick dad. So,
Yeah. Yeah. No one had the warm and fuzzy pop that went on to kill 17 people.
I'm sure Genghis Khan didn't have Mike Brady for a father, but who knows?
Right. His boyfriend tells his backstory too. Apparently, his mother was indentured to a rich merchant, and they traveled the world until his mother died, and then he was ditched by the rich merchant. And he uses a really cool phrase: "You can't be an immigrant if you don't stay in one place."
Hmm. That is a really good line, and that, yeah, yeah, that is true.
And
That's
that and
pretty
that
good.
and that is where their little pillow talk scene ends. We're back at the Banshee. And
Mhm.
here comes Mr. Pierce now to confront Leary about his meeting with Strickland. How did it go? Did you meet with Strickland?
Now, going back to what you said a little while ago about the meeting with Strickland
Yeah.
and how maybe it dawned on him that he was setting it up, it actually just occurred to me that, and I'm not saying you're wrong, you could be right, but do you think that if Pierce was trying to set him up, that he would have sought him out? Like, say if you're trying to set someone up to be killed, and then they weren't killed, on the chance that maybe they figured out, would you seek them out? I don't know. Could
Well,
be.
they always, it seems, in these cases. I mean, think of how many different episodes you've seen of something where someone tried to set someone up and then they're like, "Oh, that son of a bitch, we're gonna get him, Jack. I promise you, we're gonna get
like
him." Right?
like
And
with
meanwhile,
I'm thinking of Scarface of Frank Lopez when
there
Tony
you
Montana
go.
shows up in the dealership.
Yeah. That's one of them. That's exactly right. So yes, I do believe that. Um, and Leary is very matter of fact and chill. Yeah, I saw Strickland. Didn't go your way, and that's where, like, the conversation ends. But Pierce doesn't like that. He demands answers, and Leary's like, "You don't come to my house and talk to me like that." And he gives Pierce a good forking in the hand. He sticks a fork in Pierce's hand right on the bar, and Pierce yells out in pain.
Yeah, a little Luca Brasi action there.
Yeah, yeah. And Pierce says, "I'm gonna get the police. I'm gonna have you arrested." And Larry calls him out on it. Sure, okay. You need a cop?
And
Here
there's a
comes
cop
one.
there.
There's one right there having a drink.
This is my favorite scene in this particular episode because it's just it is maybe unintentionally comical because Leary is like, I was like, okay, here you go, and then the
"Hey, here's
cop
a
goes
cop
over.
for you." He's like, "What seems to be the problem? Any
Anyone?
witnesses?"
Any,
Cops
anyone?
play cops are playing along with Larry. Like, no one opens it, no witnesses. And Pierce leaves defeated and says, "I won't forget this."
He said that was the point.
That was the point. Leary said that was the whole
and
plan, dude.
and here we see Leary kind of flexing his own power to a more powerful man, which
Right.
is a kind of
Right.
fun.
And he didn't need to, obviously, he assaulted him by stabbing him in the hand. But
Yeah,
I could think of about 47 other things worse than that Leary could have done to Pierce with the knowing, especially being armed with the new knowledge of that Pierce could have possibly been setting him up. And more importantly, probably didn't do worse to him because now he's starting to see the bigger picture
yeah,
that Strickland laid out to him. So he actually showed some restraint in how he handled. In fact, he may not have shoved that fork in Pierce's hand if Pierce didn't push the issue a little bit more because he was walking away from him when he said it didn't go your way and tried to end it right there quickly.
yeah.
So Pierce got what he had coming to him, and hence the scene ends. We see now Assam walking Yan Mi home. They get to her door at their house above the print shop, and he has to frisk her yet again. And there's that vibe again, Mike, between them.
Yeah, and this scene, this is one of those things that I appreciate. It shows a good storytelling because they conveyed a lot with just looks and no dialogue. There was definite some sexual tension there. They were this close to each other.
Right,
They were
so close to
almost
kissing.
right, and you almost thought it was going to happen. It was one of those really good, satisfying scenes, and the way it was shot, just you're like, will they or won't they? And
The way she was
well,
looking at him, the look on her
yeah,
face, and even him, and then when he was done frisking her, and the way he was putting his arms around her was much different than any of the other friskings we had previously seen. And he says to her, "Good,
yeah,
good night," and then that was it. So they both show restraint for the moment, at least.
and he's got a bright future as a TSA agent.
He, and we know this now because she goes back inside. Assam leaves, and she's in front of her mirror. She's winding down, and she takes her hair clip out, and that's when we learn what's going on.
Yeah, she was in fact taking money, but she was putting it in her hairpin bun, whatever you call it. She was hiding it in her hair.
Rolled up fake chop in her hair clip, and
Yep.
Assam did not look at any accessories, only felt around her clothing.
Yep.
Back at Nellie's, it's nighttime, and she and Atoy are there. Nellie says something like, "Everyone's asleep. It's just you and me now." And they were, gonna maybe have a glass of wine and wind down or whatever. But then
Have a bath.
perhaps
They were
have a
gonna have a
bath.
bath.
Yes, that would have been great. But unfortunately, there's some noise on the grounds, and quickly we find out something's wrong, Mike.
Yeah, it looks like Strickland wasn't waiting for his answer after all.
No, no.
They're trying to burn down the farm and the house,
There's a bunch of
and
guys there.
yeah, and probably kill as many people as they could. Although I don't think that was the point. I think the point was just to destroy the property and intimidate her.
Yep. And so the
Yeah.
place is now on fire. There's several men with torches lighting various parts of the location, and everything is going up in flames. Nellie goes to get her gun, and Strickland's men open fire. And that's when Atoy strikes. Atoy and Lai. Lai is there, and Atoy gives her some instruction, and they all start fighting. These women start fighting. Meanwhile, Mike, the fire's raging.
Yeah. And it really doesn't even matter at this point because the damage is done. But they're fighting back. It's really fun to see them, to see Lai and Atoy. You wanted Lai to get her life together. But it's also fun as a fantasy or just chopping people too.
Yeah.
So that was pretty fun just from a visual standpoint. That was exciting. Not much to say about this. Just a lot of action, and it shows how well it looks like the whole railroad eminent domain storyline is just now taking a dark and violent turn.
Yeah.
You could argue that Strickland probably should have waited a little bit, but
Time is of the essence when it comes to business, Mike.
yeah, I guess so. I
Yeah.
guess so with the railroad.
Some
And,
interesting points during this. Atoy is awesome. She fights like a champ again, right? But we do notice that her shoulder still is affecting her. She winces for a moment and like touches herself
Yeah.
there near her collarbone, right?
Yeah.
Nellie takes a punch to the face, and Lai comes to her rescue. Her and Lai, Atoy and Lai, come to each other's rescue at a couple different times during this fight. It's a really, really good fight. and they are able to beat Strickland's men off, at least physically. Even like you said, even if
what did you say?
They
What
were
did you
able
just
to
say?
fend them off. Fend them off. You filthy man, get your mind out of the gutter.
Sorry, that was some low hanging fruit there.
I'd pay to see that scene though. But that is where the scene ends, right? They fight off the attack. The place is burning down. They're all banged up between Lai and Nellie and Atoy. Some of the women have to be dead because they were on fire. We saw Nellie tamping one of them out with a blanket, trying to put her out. So it's a pretty ugly scene and damaging to Nellie's winery and to her future prospects of maintaining her ownership of that land. And that is where the episode ends, Mike. A really awesome ending to the episode.
Yeah. It ended with some good action, ended with a good punch. It's like I said before, the whole episode, the scenes were kind of quick cut. I couldn't put an exact number. I'd say every scene probably ran an average of like 5 minutes or so. And just the pacing was excellent. They just kept the story moving along and moving and really good episode.
Yeah.
Really with a good punch at the end.
Excellent stuff. We move on to episode 4 for our next show, and we will not take 3 months to do this. We will get it back to you and available for you in no time. Meanwhile, please like and subscribe. We need viewers. We need subscribers. We need to spread the word about Warrior. Mike, anything to add before we take off?
Just hoping for Warrior season 4, or at the very least some news if it's going to happen or not. Just stop leaving us hanging. Come on, Netflix, let us know.
That's it. Until episode 4, season 3, we're out of here.